You have probably met someone like this before. They drive an older car. They wear the same jacket every winter. They never bring up money, never complain about prices, never brag about a raise or a bonus. And yet, somehow, years later, you find out they own their home outright, or they retired at 55, or they quietly paid for a grandchild's college tuition without telling anyone until it was done. At the time, you probably did not think much of it. But what if I told you that silence was not an accident? What if the reason you never heard them talk about money is the exact same reason they have it? By the end of this video, you will know exactly what they are doing differently, and one of these habits might surprise you more than the rest. Here is the strange truth about wealth in America today. The people who talk about money the most are usually the ones who have the least of it. Scroll through social media for 5 minutes and you will see luxury hauls, new car reveals, vacation countdowns, and screenshots of investment gains. According to a 2023 survey from the Federal Reserve, nearly 40% of American adults could not cover an unexpected $400 expense without borrowing or selling something. And yet that same week, millions of people online are showing off purchases that cost 10 times that amount. There is a strange mismatch between what people show and what they actually have. The wealthy, the ones with real, durable, boring money, figured out a long time ago that staying quiet is not modesty, it is strategy. And once you understand why, you will start seeing it everywhere. Here is the core idea I want you to walk away with today. Wealthy people are not hiding 10 secret investment tricks. They are hiding 10 habits. And these habits are so unglamorous, so repetitive, and so quiet that nobody ever wants to talk about them, let alone film a video about them. These are not hacks. They are behaviors practiced so consistently that they stop looking like discipline and start looking like personality. And because they are invisible, nobody questions them, nobody criticizes them, and nobody tries to talk the wealthy person out of them. By the time most people notice the pattern, the person has already been living it for 20 or 30 years. So why the silence? Why would someone who has built real wealth never explain how they did it? Part of it is social friction. If you tell a friend you have not upgraded your phone in 5 years on purpose, that creates an uncomfortable contrast. If you mention you packed lunch every single day for 15 years while colleagues bought takeout, it can sound like judgment, even when it is not meant that way. Wealthy people learn early that talking about frugal habits invites criticism, jealousy, or unwanted advice, so they simply stop talking about it. The habit continues. The conversation does not. There is also a deeper psychological layer here, something researchers call status non-disclosure. A study referenced by Thomas Stanley, the author who spent decades studying millionaires, found that the majority of actual millionaires in America do not live in mansions, do not drive luxury cars, and are frequently mistaken for middle class. Stanley called these people prawns, an acronym for people routinely avoiding wealth notice. They drive the wealth, but they avoid the notice. Because the moment people know you have money, the dynamic around you changes. Family members ask for loans, friends expect you to pay for dinner. Even small comments shift, like jokes about you being rich now. So the wealthy person has 2 choices: talk about money and deal with the social fallout, or stay quiet and let the habits do the work in private. Almost every one of them chooses the second option, and they choose it for decades without ever explaining why. Let's look at what some of these habits actually look like, because once you see them, you will start noticing them everywhere. The first habit is driving a car well past the point where most people would trade it in, not because they cannot afford a new one, but because they have run the numbers. And they know a car loses roughly 20% of its value the moment it leaves the lot, and continues losing value every single year after that. If someone buys a $35,000 car every 5 years for 30 years, that is $210,000 spent on vehicles that are worth a fraction of that the moment the ink dries on the paperwork. Now, compare that to someone who buys a reliable used car for $15,000 and drives it for 12 years. Over that same 30-year period, they might spend $60,000 total. That difference, $150,000 invested at an average annual return of 7% over those 30 years, grows to roughly $400,000. Same income, same 30 years. Completely different outcome. And the wealthy person never mentions this, because admitting you drive an old car on purpose when you couldn't afford a new one sounds to most people either boastful or strange.
The second habit is what some call stealth saving, automatically diverting money before it ever reaches a checking account where it could be spent. This sounds almost too simple to matter, but the math tells a different story. Imagine someone sets aside just $600 a month, starting at age 25, investing it consistently in a diversified index fund averaging a 7% annual return. By age 65, that consistent $600 a month becomes approximately $1.4 million. Not because the person earned an unusually high salary, and not because they picked a winning stock, simply because the money never had the chance to be spent in the first place. The habit is not exciting enough to talk about at a dinner party. Nobody says, "Guess what? I automated a transfer 15 years ago," and people clapped. But that boring automation is often the single largest contributor to someone's net worth by retirement. The third habit, and this is the one most people would actively deny if you ask them about it directly, is deliberately looking less wealthy than they actually are. This is not about humility. It is about protection. When people perceive you as financially comfortable, requests start arriving. Could you help with rent this month? Could you co-sign this loan? Could you lend me a few thousand until payday? Wealthy people learn that the appearance of financial struggle, or even just financial averageness, acts like a shield. They are not lying about having money. They are simply not advertising it. And the difference between those two things changes everything about how people treat them. The fourth habit is something almost nobody admits to, and that is reading every single bill, statement, and bank notice in full every month, without exception. Most people glance at the total and move on. Wealthy people read the line items. They catch the subscription that auto-renewed at a higher price. They notice the small fee that appeared out of nowhere. According to data from a 2022 consumer finance study, the average household loses over $200 a year to unused subscriptions and unnoticed fee increases alone. Over 40 years, even at a modest 7% return, that adds up to tens of thousands of dollars lost, simply because nobody was paying attention. The wealthy person is not smarter. They are just reading the statement. The fifth habit is treating insurance and emergency funds as boring infrastructure rather than wasted money. Most people see an insurance payment or an emergency fund contribution as money disappearing for nothing. Wealthy people see it as the thing that prevents one bad month from becoming 10 bad years. If an unexpected medical bill, car repair, or job loss hits someone with no cushion, they often end up borrowing at high interest rates just to survive. And that debt can take years to unwind. The person with even a modest emergency fund simply pays the bill and moves on, with no story to tell and no drama to share. There is nothing exciting about a fully funded emergency account. That is exactly why nobody talks about it. The sixth habit is buying the same things repeatedly instead of constantly searching for something new. Same brand of clothing, same grocery list, same restaurant on the rare nights they eat out. This sounds almost too small to matter, but repetition removes decision fatigue. And decision fatigue is one of the biggest hidden drivers of impulse spending. When you are not constantly evaluating new options, you are not constantly tempted by new options. The wealthy person is not disciplined in the way people imagine. They have simply removed most of the decisions that lead to overspending in the first place. Now, let's bring this back down to something practical, because all of this matters very little if it stays abstract. If you wanted to start applying even a few of these habits today, the entry point is almost laughably small. It starts with automating a transfer of any amount, even $50 a paycheck, into an account you do not see when you check your daily balance. It continues with delaying any non-essential purchase over $100 by exactly 48 hours. A tactic behavioral economists have shown reduces impulse spending by roughly 30%, simply by interrupting the immediate dopamine loop. It means reading one full bank statement this month, line by line, even if it feels tedious. And it means becoming comfortable saying nothing when a friend mentions their new car, their new phone, or their upcoming trip. Not out of judgment toward them, but because your silence protects your own habits from social pressure.
Here is the part that tends to surprise people the most: the counterintuitive reveal that contradicts almost everything you hear about building wealth. Most financial advice tells you to focus on increasing your income. Get a better job. Start a side hustle, ask for a raise. And while none of that is wrong, here is the uncomfortable truth. Lifestyle inflation almost always rises to match income increases, often within months. Multiple studies on lottery winners and sudden income increases show the same pattern again and again. Spending rises to consume nearly all of the new income within a relatively short period, regardless of how much the income increased. The seventh and most important habit, the one that ties everything else together, is not how much someone earns. It is whether they let their spending rise at the same pace as their income. Someone earning $60,000 who keeps their lifestyle flat while their income grows to $100,000 over a decade will, almost without exception, build more wealth than someone earning $150,000 whose lifestyle expanded just as quickly. The habit is not earning more. The habit is staying the same while everything around you tells you that you should not. There are 3 more habits worth naming quickly, because together they round out the full picture. The 8th habit is avoiding debt for anything that loses value over time, while remaining completely comfortable using debt for things that grow in value, like a reasonably priced home. The 9th habit is reviewing net worth privately on a regular schedule, often monthly, not to obsess over it, but to catch small problems before they become large ones. And the 10th habit is treating every raise, bonus, or windfall as an opportunity to increase savings first, before any lifestyle upgrade is even considered. None of these 10 habits require a high income. None of them require special knowledge. What they require is repetition, privacy, and patience. 3 things that do not make for exciting conversation. Now for the warning. Because every one of these habits has a mirror image, a quiet failure mode that looks completely normal from the outside. The danger is not one big financial mistake. Nobody goes broke from a single bad decision. The danger is a slow leak. Repeated small choices that each feel harmless in isolation. Upgrading a phone every single year, eating out 4 or 5 times a week without tracking it, letting subscriptions accumulate until nobody remembers what half of them are for. None of these moments feel significant. None of them trigger alarm. But add them up over a decade, and the difference between the person who quietly automated $600 a month and the person who let small leaks drain roughly the same amount can be the difference between retiring comfortably and working well into their 70s. The slow leak does not announce itself. It just quietly determines which version of your future you end up living, one unremarkable month at a time.
So here is where we land. The people who never talk about money are often the people who have figured out something the rest of us are still chasing. That wealth is built in silence, in automation, in habits so boring, nobody wants to post about them. The next time you notice someone who seems to live comfortably, without ever mentioning money, without ever showing off, without ever complaining, you are not looking at someone who got lucky. You are looking at someone who decided, probably years ago, that the habits mattered more than the conversation. And now you know what they know. If this changed how you think about even one of your own habits, subscribe. Because next week, we are breaking down the exact dollar amount it takes to never have to think about money again. And that number might surprise you.